Hi, I'm Rick Bothling. I'm the Executive Director of Race Across America, and welcome to the OhioRAAM Show.
Well, thank you, Rick Bothling, for that introduction. We appreciate it. We caught up with you a couple weekends ago over at the OhioRAAM Challenge, which has no official connection with the OhioRAAM show. Our names just happen to be similar. This is a show about cycling and ultra-cycling. It is aired 3 times a month on the 7th, the 17th, and the 27th of each month. The show is sponsored by Time Stations 41 in Oxford, Ohio, and Time Station 42 in Blanchester, Ohio, time stations for the Race Across America. They operate independently. Each one is different. Each one is special. And we appreciate what these great folks do for us every year. And my name is Lee Kreider. I'm the host of the show. We're now starting our 5th year in this show, and we are looking at show number 130. Just another update on Danny Chu, a very well-known ultra-cyclist who was seriously injured a few weeks ago. Danny has now been moved out of ICU. As I understand it, he is now in rehab. We wish him well as he gets into rehab. We still have hopes that he might show some recovery. Get well, Danny. If anybody can lick this thing, it's Danny Chu. In today's show, we're going to have Vaune Davis from Toronto, Ontario. Vaune just had a toe fusion this past summer, and I have to say that because of the Canadian United Health Service, it cost her a total of $5. It's always a good idea to go to the website, even if you're watching the show on YouTube or one of the other sites that embed the show. Go to OhioRAAMshow.com, and there you will have some links that will tell more about the person. Some other information links are be involved. And with that, we're just going to go on across to Toronto, Canada, and Vaune Davis. Well, hi, Vaune. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you, Lee?
I am great. As I said, we're recording this in the month of March, at the very end of March, and it started to look like spring around here. By the time this gets on the air, we will be bumping up against fall. Tell us a little about yourself, your little background, what you do.
I assume you're sort of interested in my cycling experience and what got me into cycling. And I think like a lot of people in ultra endurance sports, a lot of people discover it at different points in their lives and fall into it and become addicted. And that's kind of what happened to me, but it did not happen to me until I turned 50, which was 6 years ago. So I've kind of gone a long way in a short time. I have a rather odd way of having gotten into cycling. I have very severe arthritis that I've had since I was 19 years old. You can probably see, I'll show you my hands. They're all sort of messed up. That is as a result of this arthritis that I had that was not controlled until my mid-40s. And once I got a little more active, once the effective drug treatments came out for it, I started to get more mobile. I used to actually walk with a cane at some points in my life. Couldn't walk more than a couple of blocks. And but then once I got more mobile around the city, I got a commuter bike because I found that it was actually easier to ride a bicycle than it was to walk because I have a lot of arthritic damage in my feet. And I started riding a bicycle around the city just for mobility because it was easier than taking the subway or even driving from one place to the next because I could just ride right up to where I wanted to go and I didn't have to park and then walk a long distance. And that interest in cycling. And then one day when I was 50, my husband said, you know, Vaune, you really have to get off the sofa. And I'm really sick of you not getting much exercise. And he persuaded me to go to a spin class. That ended about halfway through the introductory class with me lying down next to a bucket. And lying down next to a bucket. I couldn't get all the way through that introductory spin class, but I kept going. I went back and I went back again, and You know, a funny thing happens in endurance sports where you get sort of addicted to the endorphins, and that certainly is what happened to me, because within about 6 months I bought a road bike. I'd done a charity ride, and I had joined a cycling club, and I was going gangbusters into the sport. What happened to me, like a lot of older people, is I joined a club with a bunch of young whippersnappers, and I kept getting dropped. And oddly, that didn't really bother me too much. And I just kept riding. And they would go out for 50 kilometers and I'd do 100. They'd go out for 75, I'd do 160. So before I knew it, I was doing 100-mile rides, but mostly by myself. And I find I actually quite liked it. And then I started upping the ante all the time to go further. And the following year, attempted Paris.
What year was that?
That was 2011. Yeah. Well, what happened was I did a tour around Puerto Rico, which was 600 kilometers in 3 days, and I didn't think I'd be able to finish it, and actually did really well and kept up with everyone very nicely. Then decided that since I could do 200 kilometers in a day, maybe I should try 300. So I started randonneuring. And before I knew it, I'd worked my way all through a brevet series, and I was on a plane to Paris. So it was a bit foolhardy, but I did it. I did not finish Paris that year. I fell short by about 140K due to insomnia, not because I ran out of time, but because I was never able to sleep through the whole event, which for me in ultracycling has been a challenge. Most people struggle to stay awake on the bike. I struggle to sleep.
That's interesting. It seems that listening to your story, there's a familiar pattern here, Vaune. I've been thinking a lot about patterns.
Yeah.
The familiar pattern is a person takes it up and almost, not immediately, but very soon on, longer distances get to be interesting, a challenge, something they want to do. It seems like there's those kind of people who pick up on that really quickly.
Yeah, and I don't quite understand that myself. I don't really know why I like doing these crazy long distances. I do know as a person that I've always been capable of starting, like if I go to, the simple household chores, like maybe painting a room. I might always in my life, I was able to say start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would not stop all day. I would eat while painting. I would not stop the job until it was completely done. And I almost wonder whether this sport appeals to people who have some kind of obsessive compulsive disorder. I like the solitary journey of trying mind over matter, of trying to figure out how to get past the pain and past the fatigue and just keep going and get the job done. I find that very appealing on both a physical and a spiritual level.
I want to ask you more about that, but before I go on, the thought crossed my mind. With your arthritis, do you have any special adaptation to handle the bike?
That's a very good question. I actually ended up getting a custom bike made because I have my cervical vertebrae have been fused. You asked me about whether I have any specific adaptive aids. Yes, I would say my biggest adaptive aid is my custom bicycle. Because I have a fusion in my cervical vertebrae from arthritis, there's two of them that are fused together. I can't turn my neck very well. And I also have almost no cartilage in my shoulders. Because of that, I had to have a bike made that was a little more upright than a lot of bicycles. I'm not as aero as most people. That does cut my speed. But I have to be more upright because of the limitations in my arms and my shoulders, both from an ergonomic standpoint, but also for safety, because I have to be able to see, because I can't turn my neck as well as most people. And I also wear a mirror because I can't turn my head as well to see traffic. So those are all things that cut the aerodynamics on the bike. But, I take the view, the biggest person I have to beat is myself, not others. So I'm only going to go as fast as I can go, with my physical limitations. But having the custom bicycle made was really a good thing. I think in the future, however, if I get another bicycle, if and when I get another bicycle, I'll probably get disc brakes and electronic shifting as well. Because that's, I just did a pack tour last week, and we were doing a lot of long climbs and a lot of long descents, and it's very hard on the hands to do those kinds of long descents without disc brakes. And I actually got blisters on my fingers from all the shifting.
I remember my wife and I were doing Ride the Rockies on our tandem, and I got to thinking about breaking that son of a gun on the way down. So I got me some tennis balls. When I was in the office, I would sit there and try to improve my muscle strength, because those things can be hard to stop sometimes when you're on a big distance. Well,
but all these things have been disabilities for me. I mean, and they do limit my cycling. They do limit my speed, my potential athletically. But on the other hand, I do feel there have been a lot of advantages to having had a long history with a chronic disease in this sport.
Well, just to backtrack a little bit, before we went on the air, you do work for the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company. Tell me a little about what you do.
Okay, I'm, well, I was a field journalist for many years, but now I manage journalists as an assignment editor. So I'm the person who comes in the morning, and I handle the news for Eastern Canada. So my job is to take the available staff, look at all the news stories that are developing in that region of the country, and make sure they get covered. People make their deadlines, that they have the right resources, that I put them on flights. I make sure they have what they need to get their job done, and that their deadlines are clear and their assignments are clear. And that's my job at the moment.
And on the day we're recording this, you had a bit of a challenge with an air crash over in the Ile de Magdelenes, did you not?
Yes, I did. Yeah, there was a very tragic crash in a former Liberal member of Parliament, very well respected, loved man, and he was returning for a funeral, his father's funeral, and really wanted to get home. And it looks like the pilot took some unfortunate risks to get him home, and flew in bad weather, and the whole plane went down, and everybody on the plane died. So on a remote, a fairly isolated island. Yeah. Yes,
my wife and I have been there with our tandem. We were cycling on Prince Edward Island, got down there to, I forget the name of the town. It's whatever the French word for mouse is, on PEI. Yeah, and so he said, let's just hop on the ferry and go over to the Ile de Magdelenes. And that was quite a nice little trip. We took a couple days there, and we were talking about wind. Oh my, oh my, oh my.
Yeah, it's very, very windy there. Yeah.
Well, sorry for that little digression, but I told you this is just chatting over the coffee cups and down at Tim Hortons. You've heard of Tim Hortons, I gather.
Oh yeah, that's Hortons. I'm not sure there'd be any cycling clubs in Canada without Tim Hortons. That's where we all go, because any distance cyclist in Canada knows Tim Hortons, because you end up in remote areas, and it's usually the only place that's open at night. So Tim Hortons is open 24/7, and everything else shuts by 8 p.m. in any kind of rural area. So you can go, and they usually let you sleep in there. They'll let you fall asleep on the tables, and they fill up your water bottles with ice, and they're very nice there. They once gave me a garbage bag to finish a 600-kilometer brevet, because it was pouring rain and I was hypothermic, and the Tim Hortons counter lady gave me a garbage bag, and that allowed me to finish the brevet.
I once met Fred Bothling, the CEO of RAAM, in a Tim Hortons close by us here, and we got to chatting about it. And he was up in Canada not too long ago, and he sent me an email. He said, there's Tim Hortons everywhere. And I told him, I said, yeah, if you look around, you'll even find a Tim Hortons inside a Tim Hortons.
Yeah, that's pretty well it. But it does work for us in cycling. It's the food is okay, and it's, you can get something reasonably healthy, and the coffee's hot, and it's always open and clean. The washrooms are clean. So there you go. But what else could a cyclist ask for?
And when we were cycling on Prince Edward Island, it was the only place we could find in those days that was non-smoking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, listen,
okay.
we've taken a U-turn or a left turn here or something. Let's get back. Well, I noticed. I think your name first cropped up in my radar in an article that John Foote published in Ultra Race News about you racing in Sebring. What are some of the other races you've been in?
Okay, well, after I tried to do Paris and failed, that just actually left me. It was like a problem that I hadn't solved, and I had to solve it. So the following year, I thought, well, I couldn't do it. I couldn't sleep for a 3-day race. Let me just dial it back a little and only do a 24-hour race. So I did Sebring in I think it was 2013, 2012. Yeah, 2012. I did Sebring, and I ended up breaking the women's, at the time, it's since been broken, but I broke the female age group record that year. And so I was completely charged up and wanted to do even more. Oh, that was my first ultra race. I love Sebring. Sebring's a great race.
You also did Raw. I looked back on the records in 2014, according to my notes.
I did Raw. So what happened was I did Sebring that year, and then I did a 1,200-kilometer brevet in the Rocky Mountains and managed to sleep. So that worked out. And it was a real victory for me because doing that one, it was a really hard brevet where the weather was, I know what it was. I got the McSweeney Scholarship through the UNCA. That was it. I got the Amory, which is a scholarship they used to have for women to train to go to Pac Tour Desert Camp for a week. And me and one other woman got that scholarship that year, and we went, and I just got completely charged up riding with a lot of very accomplished ultra cyclists, and learned quite a bit, and then attempted another 1,200-kilometer brevet. It was like I was just determined that I was going to be able to do it. And what happened was that year on Pac Tour, there was a freak storm where it got down to freezing in Arizona in March. It was raining and sleeting, and almost, I think only 5 of 80 people were able to finish the ride that day. And I learned a lot about how to dress in really adverse conditions, how to ride my bicycle, stay warm, how to layer clothing, which are actually, you would think, what do you do? Just throw on clothes? Well, it's actually really tricky to do it right. That summer, I did a 1,200-kilometer brevet where we had very similar conditions in the Rocky Mountains where it poured rain and got down to freezing. We even had a little snow, and this was August in the Rockies. And I was one of only half the people who was able to finish that event. So after that, I really felt like I kind of had proven myself to myself.
You figured out you could do it.
I figured out I could do it. I was able to sleep. I was able to overcome a lot of anxiety. I would say the best thing that ever happened to me was actually failing to finish Paris, because I learned something very powerful there. And that was that DNFing is really no big deal. At the end of the day, I had people in my club who were saying, you must feel terrible you weren't able to finish Paris. And I said, no, I had a great ride in France, and I rode as far and as hard as I possibly could. So the only experience I didn't have that you have is the last letters. That's no big deal. And I really realized in my heart that when you really do the very best you can, and maybe you fall short, that's not the apocalypse. From then on, I was able to go into events without a lot of anxiety, which I think is really important for ultra cyclists to realize that, every once in a while you will DNF an event. That's part of the experience. And I don't think it's that horrible. To be able to DNF makes you a better cyclist.
On Raw, according to my notes here, you did the 878 odd miles.
Yeah, 86 hours, and I think it was 86 hours and 14 minutes, something like that. I don't remember it wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't shabby. I was 54 years old at the time. I had a fantastic crew. I've been really, really lucky. I mean, nobody does this on their own. I train at a gym in Toronto called Mindset Cycling, which is a CompuTrainer studio. And the coach there is a very accomplished RAAM cyclist. He's done RAAM 3 times, finished it twice. Peter Euler. He did it in 10 days last time in, I think it was 2013. Yeah. Anyway, Peter has, looked past the middle age and the arthritis and all the things that would suggest I don't have a lot of potential, and has really taken me under his wing and encouraged me. And he was my crew chief on RAAM, as well as some of his crew from his past races. And I was probably the least experienced racer in that race with the probably most experienced crew. And I was very, very lucky to have them. And they also crewed me at Furnace Creek 508 one year, and they've been behind me 100%.
One of the things that you shared with me before while we were talking about getting you on here was the question of age and what it has to do with ultracycling, and your thought that perhaps this is a sport for which middle-aged people are particular.
Middle-aged, from a practical level, middle-aged people can afford, I tend to be able to afford ultracycling, both in terms of time and money. This is not a cheap sport. But on the other hand, I've been very fascinated to read. There's quite a bit of research being done now, particularly by a researcher in Switzerland, who takes the data from a lot of the ultra races, both swimming, running, cycling, triathlon, and aggregates the numbers, studies the numbers. And he's been looking at trends for both gender, over time, and then age groups. And more what he is finding is that the longer the distance in most of these sports, if you look at the average age of the top finishers, the older they are by distance. So the average age of the finishers, for example, in ultra triathlon would be in the mid to late 40s for the top, say, 3 to 5 finishers. Whereas in just regular conventional short triathlon, only 180 kilometers of cycling, that would be more in the 30s. Really, there is something there with age. People peak later on longer distances. And I've been asking myself why. And I have a few thoughts on it. Well, again, just looking at research, what I've been reading, at least in some of the medical journals and everything, is that as we age, we experience sarcopenia. I guess it's a muscle loss, muscle wasting. It's a natural process as we age. And we can stave it off with weight training, etc. But as we age, we lose our fast twitch fibers quite rapidly, but the slow twitch fibers not so fast. So those are the ones that are responsible for more aerobic efforts, longer distances. So we retain our ability to work for long periods of time, but maybe we don't work as hard, if that makes sense. And then also the next factor is psychological. And I think that as we age, we accumulate more experiences where we've been in really unpleasant circumstances, maybe
exactly
stuck in the rain, maybe our car broke down on the highway,
exactly,
and there's no tow truck in sight, things like that, and you go, oh my God, the world is coming to an end. But as we age, we realize that a lot of these experiences, just a few hours go by and everything's better again. And so you have more cycles of that, such that you're able to visualize yourself out of a really bad situation on the road. Any ultracyclist will tell you that, you just have to wait and it will get better. So I did a race in Texas. My first 500-mile race was the Texas 500 in 2012. And I went into this race and there was all these younger women in the race. There was 2 women who were in their 50s, me and one other woman. And the rest were in their 20s and 30s. And I thought, oh my God, I'm just going to be at the very tail end of this. And sure enough, at the beginning of the race, they were way ahead of me, a lot of these younger women. But as the race went on, and the conditions worsened, we got really bad, heavy rain during the race. And there was also quite a bit of heat. As the race went on, the younger women dropped out of the race. And the only 2 who finished were the women in their 50s. But as I got more and more into the sport, I understood it better. I think the other thing that's really helped me a lot in the sport is that having had a chronic illness for 30 years of my life, I had to live with fatigue and pain every day. And I still had to go to work. I still had to raise my children. I still had to maintain a relationship with my husband. I had to do all the normal things that people had to do, but I had to do it while in constant pain and fatigue. And what better training for ultra endurance sport than that? In many ways, the pain and fatigue of an ultra endurance race is my comfort zone. Anyway, so the whole thing with aging, and I mean, it's been fascinating. This journey in ultra cycling to me has been fascinating to sort of see what humans can actually do against the odds. I mean, we are endurance machines. Human beings are endurance machines. And that is what I've learned. I mean, people think I'm crazy, and the people I know who are not, even cyclists I know, think I'm crazy doing this.
Well, I think, yeah, you are a little bit. It's just the nature of who we are.
Yeah. But I just don't stop. I'm not the fastest. I'll never be the fastest. And, I win a lot of races, mainly because there's not a lot of competition in a lot of the women's races. But, usually a woman in this sport, you'd show up, you finish, you end up on the podium. That's great. But the real competitor for me is me. It's not other women. I'm very happy to see other women win if they're better than me, stronger than me. I don't say better. It's conquering my own fears, my own anxieties, my own fatigue. Ultra cycling is a very analytical sport. You'll find there's a lot of engineers and doctors and IT people in ultra cycling. I mean, you really have to be able to detach your brain from your body and say, what is this problem? What is the source of this problem I'm having now? And what am I going to do about it?
See in the future, as far as your cycling goes, got any plans, any goals, any dreams?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I deliberately dialed it back. The 2014 was a very big year for me. That's when I did Sebring, I did a full brevet series, I did the race across the West, and I did the Texas 500. By the end of that year, I was quite tired. The following year, I decided to dial it back and not compete and just do randonneuring. So I went back and I did Paris last summer.
Oh, did you?
Finished it. Yeah, no problem.
Great.
So I got that. I finished. I closed that circle on Paris, and which was great. I think really what I want to try and do now is just become a faster cyclist, because the other problem when you're older is you can ride endless junk miles, and I'm becoming extremely skilled. And I can ride for days and days and days on end, and all I do is get slower and slower and slower.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to dial up the intensity and dial down the distance. I didn't do a very good job of that last week at Pack Tour. I dialed down the intensity and dialed up the distance, because that's my comfort zone. But ultimately, what I need to do is train smarter. I mean, I have been, but it's going to take a huge amount of patience, because at a certain point it just becomes repetitive. Why am I riding endless events through the night, subjecting my body to all this torture and not getting any faster? So I have to get smarter. So I'm doing weight training with a personal trainer. I'm going and doing I'm trying to do more high intensity interval training. And then I'm going to do the hardest thing of all in the spring, which is ride with people who are faster than me, because I like riding by myself. I'm not really much of a paceline kind of gal, but I think really to get faster, I need to challenge myself with faster cyclists. So I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone.
Okay, well, listen, before we close this down, you have any other thoughts that's whirling around your brain there that you'd like to share with us? You seem to be a person full of all kinds of interesting ideas.
Just that it's a great sport. I wish it were more accessible to younger people. I mean, it's a shame that all these crude events are so expensive. I'm kind of excited about because I really do. I love ultra races. I mean, in my dreams, I would do RAAM, but I don't think at this point I'm not fast enough to do it. I would not be fast enough to finish in the 12 days and 22 hours or whatever it is for women. I'm excited about this merging of randonneuring with ultra racing through bike packing races. And I would really like to try one of those. I think what I'd really like to do is the Trans Am race. That's what I have my sights on, not this year, but maybe the following year. But I want to get faster first before I do it, because I don't want it to be just a long, slow grind just for the sake of finishing. I want the next race has got to be performance oriented. Otherwise, it's just more of the same.
We're glad to have you with us. We wish you the very best, Vaune.
Thank you very much.
We hope that we'll hear more of you from time to time.
Oh, you will. I'll be around. I'm just trying to get better right now.
Okay, thank you so much. And with that, we're going to say goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Vaune Davis, for being with us. And we wish you well in your cycling. We hope you will recover from that last surgery, and we'll see you back on the bike very soon. I suspect we will. We want to thank all of you who watch the show. For those of you who give us support on the social media, that is greatly appreciated. As I say again and again, the whole purpose of that support is so that people get to know about the sport of ultra cycling. And we're happy to support that, and we hope that you'll help us make this known by sharing these shows. Again, we invite you to visit the website. On there, you'll find a place where you can leave a message for us. You can contact us. There's also a place where you can leave your email address if you'd like to have further notices of future shows as they come up. As I said at the beginning, this show is aired 3 times a month on 7th, 17th, and 27th. Also on the website, you'll find other links to informative sites that will help you learn more about ultra cycling and keep you up to date. It's always good to be with you. And with that, we're going to say goodbye.
Music